Did you know there are at least 2 4-letter words that you can't say at IEP or ARD meetings? Now, we'll be revealing what those 4-letter words are in a few minutes. If you are new to our show, I'm Charmaine Tanner. I'm a parent, a retired teacher, an advocate, because I want you to be an even more effective advocate so your child is safe, happy, and learning each day at school. So our video today is actually the 4th and final video in a series we've been doing about principled negotiations, which comes from that best-selling book, Getting to Yes. So what we've done in the first video, and let me show you here, is we talked about how to solve people problems at meetings. And one of the things that we talked about was, instead of having that tug of war game and that kind of power struggle that we often see at meetings, is to use the concept of principled negotiations. And again, that's from that Getting to Yes book. So that was our first video in the series. Then our second video was all about how to get to yes at meetings. And here we looked at the difference between positions and interests, and why it's so important to know those underlying interests that people have. And that's where we need to be having the discussion. So that was video 2 in our series. Then our third video last week was how to create more options at the table, because there are many possibilities. And one of our favorite quotes is, when you have exhausted all possibilities, remember this: you haven't. So today we're going to finish up our series, and we're going to be talking about, instead of those censored 4-letter words at meetings, what 4 powerful phrases that you can use instead. So I welcome you. I will post the other links for the previous videos in our post description. So if you missed any of those videos, you can come back and rewatch those. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is what we had said last week a little bit, is when we're looking at different options, it's not just the placement option, but you have choices, the team has choices and options as to what the goals are going to say, what accommodations are going to be used, assistive technology. So throughout that whole IEP process, you have options and choices. And last week we talked about brainstorming, so we think outside of that IEP box and get some other options on the table. But then it's like, well, great, we've got this brainstorm list of options, but now how do we decide which is going to be the most appropriate to use with your child? So if you have been in those places where, you know, maybe the district or the school is allowing you to think of some other possibilities, but to get the district or the school to actually decide on doing something differently might be challenging, let me know in the comments. Say hi so I can welcome you. If you are watching the replay, make sure that you know that you can still type in comments, because I'll come back and I'll answer them. Now, what I've been doing for our shows is, after the live show is done, I've been taking some of the key takeaways from that video and putting them in a document that I'm calling show notes. So if you would like to get the show notes for today's video, just type the word decide in the comments. You'll get the key takeaways with the timestamp, so it's like real easy to go back to the video and find that particular point. You'll also get quotes that are helpful and useful for you to share with others. You'll get additional resources besides the ones that we've mentioned in the video. So if you'd like to start receiving show notes, just type the word decide in the comments and we will get you set up to get that. So we've talked about, there's these 4-letter words that we shouldn't be using. But, sometimes it's like so frustrating at meetings and it's like, if I could just say this word, I think things would be so much better. Well, guess what? Guess what one of those 4-letter words are that you should not be saying at IEP or ARD meetings. So type in what you think one of those 4-letter words might be. And I'll show you here. So one of the 4-letter words that we can't use is best. B-E-S-T. I mean, there are times when you would just say, why don't we just decide what is best for my child? And that's what we're going to provide. Well, unfortunately, we have laws that say we don't really care about what's best for your child. We only care what's appropriate for your child. So, years ago, and I don't hear it very often, but years ago they used to say, your child isn't guaranteed a Cadillac. All we have to do is provide them a Chevy. And it's like, ugh. But we do want to make sure whatever we decide on at that meeting is going to be appropriate for your child. So what's the word appropriate mean? And if we look at in the context of free appropriate public education, what does that phrase appropriate mean, right? Because maybe what I think is appropriate for my son is like totally different than what the school members are thinking. So let's go back here and I'm going to show you a quote from the Supreme Court decision of Andrew F. versus Douglas County Schools. And this was a unanimous decision from the Supreme Court. And the main issue in this case was, what does the word appropriate mean? What is an appropriate education? So if you look at this quote from Chief Justice Roberts, who wrote the opinion, he says, to meet its substantive obligation under the IDEA, a school must offer an IEP reasonably calculated to enable the child to make progress appropriate in light of the child's circumstances. So that is from the Supreme Court decision, which means that this applies to everyone in our country. However, if you live in some parts of the country, you might have some state court cases that even give you kind of a higher bar to reach than appropriate in light of your child's circumstances. So even though we have the Supreme Court decision, you still need to know what your circuit courts in your region have decided, because like I said, the bar might be even higher than the Supreme Court decision for you. But for sure, everyone at least has to have this IEP that is connected with your child's unique circumstances. So when I look at my son or, a family that I'm working with as an advocate and their child, one of the first things I want to know is what their strengths and interests are. So if you are with us live, oops, somebody says they can't hear or see anything. Oh dear. So Becky is saying she can't see or hear. Can you guys see? because I see some people are writing the word decide in, so I'm thinking that they can hear, or at least they can see. So let me know. Becky, you might have to sign back out. I'm not sure why she's not seeing us. If one of you could type in the comments for Becky and ask her to like refresh her computer or her phone and see if that will work so she can get back on with us. And so what we want to look at, instead of saying what's best for my child, we're going to say what's appropriate for my child, and we're going to base that on their strengths and interests, because that's going to help keep your kid engaged and motivated at school. And that's going to help us when we look down the road for placement. And especially if you're trying to, persuade your district for your child to be included in general ed classes. If we have a well-developed strengths and interests section of the IEP, we can go back when we're looking at placement decisions and say, we know that my child is really motivated when they're with typical peers. They do so much better when they've got these role models to look at. So if we're looking at more of a self-contained placement, is that going to really tap into my child's strengths or interests? Now, the other thing that you can look at, instead of saying what you want is the best, when we're looking at appropriate for your child, is to look at the needs. And this is where you want to be really specific. So the needs are near the beginning of the meeting, but you've got to be thinking about, at the end of the meeting, we're going to be talking about placement. So I want to build my case now in this needs section. So if we use the example that your child needs to be with typical age peers, we're going to have statements like that in the needs section. And we're going to say, my son needs typical age peers for communication models. My son or daughter needs to engage in the typical reading group in order to hear fluent readers. Or maybe my child needs to be with typical age peers for positive behavior role models. Then when you get to that end of the meeting and you're deciding on the placement, and the school is offering the option of a more segregated, more restrictive placement, you can say, let's go back to the needs, because that's one of the things that we're supposed to be using as our criteria for making a decision. Is this going to meet my child's needs? And when you say, look at all these things that we talked about as to why they need to be with typical age peers, your suggestion of the self-contained classroom doesn't meet my child's needs. So let me hear from you if this is making sense. Lissa's with us. So, hey, Lissa, I'm glad that you were able to join us live. My computer or something seems to be hitting a little slow. Andrea says yes, that she can see and hear. So good. So maybe Becky will re-sign on and get back with us. So anyway, we were talking about, instead of using the word best, which is one of those 4-letter words, instead we want to talk about strengths and interests. We want to talk about the child's needs. Now, the other 4-letter word that you can't say at IEP or ARD meetings is the word want. And again, the law doesn't care what you want as a parent. The law only cares about what your child needs. And that's what the school district is accountable for, is to meet your child's needs. So if you have a tendency to be at IEP meetings and say this 4-letter word want, try to switch your brain and instead say need. So I'll give you an example. Instead of saying, I want my child to be in the Spanish elective class, say, my child needs to be able to get their foreign language credit. So one of the classes we're looking at is Spanish. So just changing that word from want to need can make a huge difference when you're having discussions at your IEP meetings. So let's look at some other things that you can talk about. You can also base your decision making on what does research-based practice say. So the school district might, or the teacher might have a favorite way of teaching math or reading, but there might not be much research to support that that's an effective method based on your child's unique needs, right? So one of the websites that I wanted to share with you, and let me see if I can share my my screen here with you, is, let's see. I'm going to go to the website. I'm going to say it's a Chrome tab and show you how you can find out what works and what research has said. So I don't know if you've ever been to, and I got to see now, I got to pull this up here. I've got too many windows that are open. So let's see. I got to bring it up. It's like I need a producer here to do all these buttons. Okay, so here we go. So this is called Find What Works. And this is a clearinghouse of all kinds of research about different academic subjects, and it even has some information on behavior, charter schools. So if this is something that, and I got to make sure that you're seeing this. Yes. If this is something that you want to kind of explore, I'll put the link in the show notes. So remember, if you want the show notes, just click on or type in the word decide and I'll get you the show notes. But anyway, so let's look. So let's say that we're looking for some research-based information about teaching students to read. So we'll go to the literacy tab here. Let's see, I've got all these other little windows. And so you can filter it by the topic. They'll have a variety of reading programs that you can click on and learn more about. Like Read 180 is a popular program. It's a computerized reading program that a lot of middle school and high school students use. And you can go down through here and you can see, for reading fluency, it says that there's been 2 studies that meet the standards of Read 180 would help with reading fluency. And then you have to look, this was done on 4th to 6th graders. Here is where it talks about literacy achievement. There's been 6 different studies to show that Read 180 helps that. And the grades that were used were 4th through 10th grade. So this What Works Clearinghouse site is something that I think you want to explore later. And like I said, I will put the link in the show notes. And if you want the show notes, just type in the word decide. So one of the topics that is on this website is also behavior. Now you see there's hardly any programs listed here, and you can see that these were all for really young kids. So there's a good bit of information. You can also go where you're going to do more filters. Like you can say, well, I want something for 3rd grade in behavior, and it will show, well, there's one result for that, and it will pull that one up. But anyway, one of the criteria that you want to use when you're deciding on accommodations, or if your child's going to be in a small group, if they're going to get large group instruction, is to look at what research has said. And of course, we know there's a ton of research about how inclusive education not only helps your child, but the other children in the classroom also. So one of the things that I often talk about is we don't want to just print off all these research-based articles and start sending them, emailing them into the teachers once a week. Because just like our kids learn in different ways, teachers learn in different ways. So we want to look at what is going to meet that learning style of the teacher. They might not want to read research-based articles. They might want to listen to a podcast about inclusive ed. They might want to see a video about it. They might want to talk to another teacher in the building that has experience with it. So when we're looking at ways that we can help the team decide on something that's going to meet our child's needs, sometimes we have to provide some extra information for them. So when we're talking about how do we decide what's going to be most appropriate, we want to look at your child's strengths and interests. We want to look at their needs, figure out what research-based practice says. We don't want to have money or a lack of training be a reason why a district decides something. The other thing that we want to make sure, and sometimes I think we forget about it, but is it age appropriate for your child? So when you're looking at even like a reading goal for your child, and if your child is in middle school but is reading on a 1st grade level, we want to make sure in that reading goal, we talk about they're going to be using age appropriate reading material. And there are a lot of high interest, low vocabulary books out there. But, I just had a mom email me the other day, and she took a picture of this, I will call like a baby book that her middle schooler was being asked to read during reading time in the special ed room. And the teacher was wondering why the student was acting up and refusing to read. And it's like, well, look at this book that you're giving them. I mean, I don't know too many middle school boys that would be wanting to read this, pretty, almost like a kindergarten level kind of illustrations and words in it. That's not going to be appropriate for your child. So there are ways, even when you word your goals in your IEP, when you decide on the specific wording in there, one of the criteria that you want to use is this going to be age appropriate for my child? So I would love to hear some of your comments. So Andrea is saying, love this idea of setting the need. Yes, and that's that's why I see like the IEP really needs to be done in the order of, these building blocks. And sometimes I have parents and they say, I need an advocate because I don't agree with the placement that the district wants to do. So we're going to have a meeting and we're just going to talk about placement. And it's like, no, that's like jumping ahead, and you're probably not going to be successful if you just try to talk about placement, because whatever you think is appropriate for a placement, you've got to build that case way at the beginning of the meeting. Like I said, with the strengths and interests, with your child's needs. You can't just jump. So all along, even in like the accommodations section, you want to be thinking about, if your child's a visual learner, then you want to look at a lot of visual accommodations in there. If your child is more of an auditory learner, you want to look at more auditory accommodations. So depending on what your child's strengths is, what their needs are, that needs to dictate what happens and what gets, actually written in your child's IEP. So the other thing I was going to mention is I had one more slide from the Supreme Court decision, and I actually have a little ebook that I wrote about that Andrew case. If you want that Supreme Court book, let me see where we are here. Just type it in the comments. Let me see. I don't know if I can bring this up. For some reason, my computer is not kind of cooperating today here. So let's see if we can go to solo. And I'm going to change to the next quote. So again, this comes from Chief Justice Roberts, and he says, a student offered an educational program providing merely more than de minimis progress from year to year can hardly be said to have been offered an education at all. So again, this comes from an ebook I wrote about the Andrew F. Court decision. If you'd like that, just let me know in the comments and I can give you the link to that ebook. But what we need to be looking at is, when we're in IEP and ARD meetings, we need to be making sure that the bar is high enough, that there's expectations that our children are going to be learning. And we can't just settle for this minimum standard, because that's not going to be fair to our kids, because they are so many times much more competent than the teachers give them credit for. Do you find that true? Have you had teachers for your kids that like don't expect them to learn much? Or have you seen IEPs where the same goal is kind of cut and pasted into the new IEP? That's not what we want to be seeing. So even though we can't use four-letter words like best and want, we can use longer words like appropriate. We have a definition of that from the Supreme Court decision. We can look at our child's strengths, interests, needs. We can look at what's going to be age appropriate for our kids. And when we're deciding on the wording in IEPs, we need to use those as our criteria for what decision we're going to make. So I hope this has been helpful. Like I said, this is the fourth and final video in our series about principled negotiations. I will put the links in for the first video about solving people problems, the second video about getting to yes, which is all about knowing the difference between positions that people take and their underlying interests. Last week, we had the live show about creating more options when you're in meetings. And then today is how we decide, that criteria that we use. And Lissa from Idaho says, Charmaine, love this. Let's see if I can get it to show. Thank you. Using appropriate wording is so important. It is. It makes like this huge difference. And making sure that that specific appropriate wording is really written in the IEP and not just verbally discussed is the next point, right? You've got to make sure that it appears in writing in your IEP. So we are here every Thursday at noon Mountain Time. I will be back next Thursday. I hope you will enjoy our shows and join us for our next show. And until then, I'm Charmaine Tanner, and have a terrific ending to your week. Bye-bye.